Day 1383 of the Ukrainian War Map, also known as the Russo-Ukrainian War. Juzzie here, and today is another update as I take a simplified and down-to-earth approach to some of the most important happenings on the ground in Ukraine. So starting off, we'll take a look at those Russian losses, as currently Russia sits on more than 1,180,000 military personnel losses, representing an additional 1,080 in the past day. Then as for hardware, 3 tanks, no APVs, 33 artillery, and 2 rocket launchers. Now to head straight through to the map, as overnight, Engels in Russia's Saratov region awoke to another round of drone-linked blasts, as residents reported unidentified aircraft over the city and nearby fuel site catching fire. Local accounts describe air defense units working in the dark and repeated crashes and flashes that jolted locals awake. Multiple posts coming out of Engels pointed to an oil depot, known locally in connection with the Crystal fuel site, as the focus of the incident, successfully hitting the depot. Now, the Engels airbase relies on the Crystal oil depot as its primary aviation fuel hub, feeding Russia's Tu-95 and Tu-160 strike aircraft fleet through an adjacent pipeline network that links the refinery's storage tanks to the airbase's fuel supply system, thereby making for a worthy target that has been struck to now successfully on 5 previous occasions, most of which, surprisingly, were from 2024 or earlier. The site's distance is 600 kilometers or about 380 miles from Ukraine, which is by no means record-breaking, but one can still argue there is still some record-breaking consistency in the AFU's ability to continue performing sustained long-range UAV operations that repeatedly penetrate deeper into Russian territory. Indeed, the statecraft behind Ukraine's methodical targeting of Russian energy assets will certainly have enough material to fill not just one book, but shelves of them in the not-too-distant future, chronicling how a campaign of drones and distance quietly rewrote the doctrines of power, supply, and reach in the 21st century warfare environment. Next up, and over the weekend, where more fixed-wing birds of freedom had again struck Russia's Ryazan oil refinery, with newly released onboard footage showing a drone closing on the facility before impact. The operation targeted the Rosneft-operated complex, amounting to the 9th successful strike on the facility this year. Ukraine's motto, 10th strike free, which Russia has cashed in at least 3 or 4 times now. Now, open source intelligence shows the attack focused on the low temperature isomerization unit, ISOMALC2, which is a unit that converts light gasoline fractions into high octane components used in motor fuel, and being a critical step between crude processing and final gasoline output. Unfortunately for Russia's fuel supply network, Ryazan is part of a small group of top-tier refineries whose combined output underpins both domestic fuel stability and export programs, and a facility handling about 5% of national refining, being a large enough volume that, when disrupted, and it is offline right now, tightens regional market supplies all on its own. In fact, Ryazan single-handedly supplies 25% of Moscow's ongoing fuel needs, or did, although if any Russian region tries to fill its own fuel gaps first, it's Moscow, attempting to keep the capital's tanks topped up, even if that means siphoning supply and subtly impoverishing the surrounding region's own fuel security it draws from, which is by no means a long-term solution. Meanwhile, up in Russia's Sverdlovsk region, far away, reaching into the western edge of Siberia, a partisan group called the Legion reports on torching an electric locomotive at the Yekaterinburg yard, a main junction point moving military cargo across the Urals. The $1 million engine, they claim, had been hauling troops, ammo, and gear alongside civilian trains. Now, rail authorities have kept silent on the matter, but the hit fits a growing pattern of deep rear sabotage that's quietly grinding Moscow's supply lines. Sverdlovsk's 7,000-kilometer rail network links factories to the front, so although even losing just one high-power locomotive at a main hub won't stop the flow, it still has the effect of making every haul slower, hotter, and harder to compensate for. Next up on the map, and to Belgorod, where a Russian aviation strike reportedly dropped a Fab 1000 type aerial munition on Belgorod, and as it turns out, near a power substation overnight, cutting electricity to parts of the city centre and prompting a rapid security lockdown. The affected area on the edge of the city was cordoned off by military security and ordnance disposal teams after a single powerful blast. Residents reported hearing the roar of a low-flying jet heading toward the Ukrainian border, but no air raid warnings were triggered before the impact. The use of the Fab 1000 type device, a roughly 1,000 kilogram or a 2,200 pound class aerial munition, was therefore unexpectedly caught up, performing friendly fire against a central substation, such that it highlights the growing risk Russia's own military operations pose to its domestic sites, ironically showing that Ukraine couldn't have really performed much of a better job themselves. Now to the main map, and where Ukrainian assault groups appear to have retaken key positions within the town of Kupiansk at its center, with several Russian troops reportedly surrendering once their supply corridor collapsed. So this renewed control over multiple blocks and surrounding intersections marks a localized Ukrainian stabilization of the urban line, with a number of recent separate reports speaking to exactly this, though as for the latest, the precise boundary of contact remains unclear, as it's impossible to determine the exact line of control at the moment. Nonetheless, the region is surely shaping up in an unexpected format, at least when it comes to the invader's own expectations, as their own presence here in recent times in the last couple of weeks has shown the stagnating affairs of the Russian army, and that would be to put it diplomatically for them. Then heading down the map, as footage released by Ukraine's military shows drones striking the Alchevsk metallurgical plant in occupied Luhansk. Yesterday's strike was a rare deep hit on a fortified industrial complex, long supporting Russian logistics in the Donbass, held since 2014. The attack also used video relay drones, 80 kilometers deep, that streamed live with footage until impact, an innovation reflecting improved control links. Next up, and to the center-west, Ukraine's newly formed 7th Air Assault Corps, an elite rapid response formation created in 2024 to unify several airborne brigades, was sighted north of the Pokrovsk rail yard, its flag reportedly visible near frontline staging points. The Corps' appearance suggests high readiness units are rotating into the sector, possibly to relieve existing infantry or prepare for a renewed push along the northern axis into the city. Then headed to the south, where Ukrainian precision fire yesterday took out a Russian Buk M3 air defense system in the Zaporizhia region, puncturing one of Moscow's few high-value shields along this axis. A target of this magnitude undercuts Russian air coverage over a sector already stretched by drone and artillery fire pressure, leaving gaps that Kyiv's strike planners will exploit for follow-up raids. Think Crimea, Rostov, and Krasnodar Krai, along with anything along Russia's Black Sea coast. So it's another sign that Russia's much-advertised integrated air defense is now a patchwork of smoking launchers and nervous operators. Then taking a look around the map, with Russian footage of heavy armor inbound on now muddied terrain, shown in all their branch cage glory, as the Tsar Mangel cage rolls through. And yes, that first one is a 1950s T-55 MBT, so main battle tank in Russian service. And the year is almost 2026. Also to be seen from around the map, in the skies, is further additional footage of Ukraine's custom-designed interceptor drones in action, with this latest example shown taking down another of Russia's Shahed drones during their latest combined missile and drone attack. These interceptors, once an isolated phenomenon, and hardly existing until this year, is now becoming a much more common occurrence, for which these example interceptions are just the early days. Then up next, because being a bit of a shorter video today, we'll head to a quick 5-second funny to round out the video, because, in this case, the Russian army continues to supply donkeys to the front lines without interruption. Seen here is some more muddy terrain, 2 donkeys, and one a bit stubborn, which is very unlike the response you'll get from a mechanical vehicle, which, by contrast, is not known to get moody. So it all begs the question, Russia, why use donkeys? Why use them? Is the 3-day SMO still not going to plan? What an embarrassment. So that's it for today, guys. Thanks again for watching. Please continue to like, comment, subscribe, and I do hope to see all of you guys there in the next one. Cheers!